All right. Hello, everyone. How you doing? Thanks for joining us today. My name is Vito, and today I have with me Amit from Talify, and we're going to be talking about delivering projects predictably. Now, you know that this is a topic that is close to my heart, and this is something that I've been dealing with for a few years now. But today, Amit has a really interesting take on how we can all deliver projects that are predictable, that are systemizable, and that allow us to scale further within our business and just not worrying about just the actual delivery or the way that we're doing things again and again, but focusing on creating new experiences, expanding the business to doing new things, then automating them, systemizing them as well. So, Amit, how are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Vito.
So I'm excited to dive into this topic today on the coaching session. So how about we start by you introducing yourself a little bit, introducing Talify, and tell us how you got into this concept of predictable project delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from England, and I moved to the US 5 years ago. Before that, for a decade, I did consulting stuff. So not unlike what maybe a lot of people with agencies do, with in terms of web development, helping people improve their processes, things like that. And it turns out that I realized that the biggest companies that I was working with or for happen to have productized offerings. So instead
Right.
of doing consulting, I'll charge you this much per hour. They would literally have a package thing. They would just often price something fixed for that. So it's like a restaurant menu. What do you want to order? This is what we offer. Pick the dish. You know what you're going to get, right? And so as agencies or even just professional services companies became more mature, they just realized they do the same thing like 50 times a month.
Right.
And then they begin to realize, well, they begin thinking about systemizing, about more importantly, think about productizing first. So I think the realization of Talify came around when we realized that automation is too far down. Like actually, the first step is to productize your actual service to the client first. After that, you then look at systemizing the delivery of that service, and then only after that you look at automation. So how can I, now that everything's established, how can I deliver the same service faster? So going back to a restaurant, have a great menu, right? So figure out what people want to eat first, right? Don't rush into automating how to make a dish because we don't even know what they want to eat yet, right? So let's get the menu right, and then let's systemize like how to order quickly from this menu, and then finally, how can we cook the dish faster so that we can just push it out the door? And I guess that's what
I love that.
McDonald's has done that at scale in all their fast food
Right.
restaurants throughout the world. So that's,
So
yeah.
when it comes to starting to decide how to build your menu, what would you suggest to agencies that are getting into the game of productization initially, or maybe most of their work now is creating those proposals again and again and again?
Mhm.
They're already in a type of a productized environment without even realizing it sometimes. But there's all kinds of different ways of approaching it. And how would you suggest identifying, sorry, these opportunities?
Yeah, do it. I think do it in the way. So all of you know what Lego is, right? Lego is made of bricks, and when you look at a finished Lego
WordPress also.
thing,
Now,
also, well, almost everything is made of some sort of brick, and so you can make the same brick is being used for 100 to make 100 different things, right? So in your proposals, don't see it as like, oh, this is a big $50,000 proposal, like something where it's just all about the big number, right? But when you look at ordering dinner, you might have three courses, right? But what do? You break them down. Like, what's your appetizer? What's your main dish? What's your dessert,
right.
right? So break it down even further into, can your proposal start by kind of listing or itemizing? Like, we will do, 6 blog posts, and each blog post will cost $200, right? So it's almost like an aggregate. Like, what is the decomposition of your proposal? Not in terms of hours, but in terms of outcomes. So what will we get you? Doesn't matter how long we take, but what will you get to do that? Especially
Right.
if you can break it down into a Lego brick. So maybe begin to think of this more like a way the hospital bills you. So, or a restaurant charges you. You go, you have an injury, you go to a hospital. They'll charge for, in the US especially, they'll charge for every bandage, every injection, every freaking tiny thing. They'll be listed, right? And
Here it's all free in the UK.
lucky you, and I know for a fact that's a good thing, right? But down here, they've got that down to a T. So it's the first step. Like, to productize, you first need to break it down into Lego pieces, and
Right.
then you might you might finally understand that this Lego piece here, it's like a consistent ingredient that almost everything needs. And so focusing on the delivery of that one ingredient becomes more like a production line design in a way. So when factories make components, they make 100 tiny components, but each of them, they make millions of them, right? And then someone else or something else puts them together. Just like in a kitchen, someone makes the sugar, someone makes the gravy, so what are those components, right? So I hope that helps in the first part, which is just, do you think it's possible to break it down?
When it comes to looking at it like, so if we're looking at this as part of ingredients, there is this mindset, and I personally agree with you. And I'm gonna be a bit of a devil's advocate here for you, Amit. Where we're starting to break things down really deep, we start finding the commoditization
Mm-hmm.
items.
Mm-hmm.
So, do I want to be the sugar or do I want to be the cake? So how do you make this differentiation and make sure that we're not just being charged on per line item that can be compared easily with
Yes.
thousands of other items on the market?
Well, if you're listening and you have an agency, you're very lucky because it's not a commodity what you do. It's actually a service that you deliver to your client, right? So I think we should really not worry about that, but just don't let the client know. The client doesn't care how automated or systemized you are. They just want the outcome done. It's like, write a blog post. Where's my blog post, right?
Right.
Is it at fantastic quality? They care about the quality outcome. They don't care that you used AI or you used like some systemized process for it, right? They don't, as long as it comes out in the way that's perfect. So your client doesn't have to know or care. For them, it's still personal service. You're still phoning them. There's a client facing person, like an account manager, talking to them, right? But separate the delivery, the factory, from the client facing end, right? The doing of it is a separate thing. That can be scaled up and designed in a completely separate way. For example, I don't know what a restaurant kitchen looks like. They don't even let you in, right? But I still pay a big top dollar price for a dish. I don't know if it was 5 times more efficient to make that dish this week than 2 months ago, right? So I don't think you change the client face, so you shouldn't worry about the commoditization, but keep the quality aspects of what you do. But as long as you guarantee that the outcome is the same, so
And
I
this
guess don't
really
tell your
the
client that what you're doing. It's your internal
right.
stuff.
So, and this is basically the objective, and just trying to get something that is going to be the same quality every
Mhm.
time, same quality, same quantity, and same time to execute as it did before, and as it did before that, and before that, and before that. And I think that this is one of the more challenging things when we're delivering websites. So now we went from the front of the restaurant, right, trying to pick the menu items. Now if I want to take you to the back side into the kitchen, and how do we make the dish, how do we make those items, those menu items, or how do
Mm.
we systemize to create this predictability?
I think there's 3 words you should think about: systemize, predictable, and quality. And they're not necessarily related to each other, although sort of they are, but they're actually separate concepts, right? Um,
Okay.
Systemize is like, we have a way, like a step-by-step way. Think of it more like a recipe, right? A way of getting to this outcome, whatever that is. So it's known, right? Predictable is, that's more now related to people. And do we have enough chefs? Do we have enough, is it predictable in the sense that we know that there will be 60 orders of this dish? So can we get the ingredients ready in advance? Can we get the people ready in advance? That's the predictability aspect of things. So you can have a recipe that doesn't mean it's predictable. right? Predictability is more like we know roughly today we'll get 60 dishes with this order, like
Right.
with this specific, right? And then finally, you have this notion of quality. So of course, all of those have to come out in a very like predictability kind of verges on this concept of quality, but it doesn't. Quality is the outcome is perfect. So even if a new chef walked into your restaurant today, which is completely crazy, like how, are you going to train this person from scratch, like again? People come and go, right? Can you still guarantee the quality of the outcome? Now, it's a
In
dream
most
come
cases,
true
in
if
most
you,
agencies, and I know in my agency, no,
yeah,
we take a few months to get through the process and get them to this understanding.
yeah. And by that time, you annoy clients, you lose months of productivity. Imagine, remember that's your biggest cost in a company, which is people's
Yes.
wages, right? And you're taking a risk of what if they suck, this person, right? Or they just so there's too much at risk here to not consider the first two parts, which is like systemize and so systemize comes first. And that's why we get to this topic of predictable, right? It's not a project, it's actually a process. You can only make something predictable if it is a process.
Right.
And if you do something 20 times a day, it's not 20 projects a day, it's 20 processes a day, which by nature means that they are comparable. For example, you give 5 chefs the same dish, one took 2 hours, one took half an hour, but they got the same outcome. So, what does that mean? Right? Is that chef slower? Yeah, probably, right? Or is there some variation this first chef is doing that the other chef isn't doing, or whatever it is, right? And that's why tweaking the system leads to more predictability, as in just throwing 5 chefs at the problem isn't quite the same as knowing or tracking it being done. Are you actually watching the chefs and what they do? Is one just not following the recipe? Right? So I think we should. So documenting a process is not the same as actually following it and watching it
Right.
being followed, which is
Yes.
another kind of atomic truth to drop here, which a lot of people think that we'll just document this in Microsoft Word or sorry in Google Docs, and oh great, we have a system, everything's great, we're systemized. Um, no, you're
No
not,
one look and
because
no
I
one
don't
gonna
think
look at it.
anyone's looking, right?
Yeah.
So it's two separate things here, right? Systemize is the document, create the system, but then the predictable part is you're tracking people actually using the system, which now gets to this wonderful final thing, the golden, amazing goal of all this stuff, which is that which is continuous improvement,
Right.
right? Continuous improvement is your client says this wasn't done, this dish didn't come out good this time, right? Well, let's tweak the salt or whatever in this recipe so that next time it comes out perfect. Well, here, get this, right? How can you tweak a recipe when no one's even following the recipe in the first place?
Right. You have no
Right?
idea where it went wrong or if it was
Yeah,
even considered when people started making that dish.
correct. And so not to get too fine a point on this, but I can share on my screen a great book if you guys, if anyone's interested in reading this idea of continuous improvement. I'm just hopefully my screen is showing.
Yes. Now it is.
So James Clear wrote this New York Times bestseller called Atomic Habits. 5 million copies sold.
Right.
He talks. There's an example in this book about the British cyclist team, which in the initial days of British cycling, there was no medals being won by the cycle. I mean, it was a terrible team. No one ever won any medals. The worst team in the world, right? This guy comes along, Dave Brailsford, his name was, and he brings in a new idea of, which is sort of this what we're talking about today, marginal gains. Like have a system, follow the system, keep improving the system. Really simple concept, right? Now, what do we mean by 1% gains? He tried to improve 100 things by 1%. Here's an example. The cyclists wore heated shorts to maintain their muscle temperature.
Right.
You think like, who cares about that? But it makes a difference, right? They rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. Here's another 1%, right? He painted the track white so you can see dust on the track, right? The cyclists took their pillow and mattress, their own pillow and mattress, to a hotel every night so that they got their best night's sleep
Nice.
instead of the hotel mattress and
Yeah.
pillow, right? I mean, I'm not, this is like only a few examples of 100 things, right? So what is the aggregate effect of all this? You improve 100 things by 1%, you start winning gold medals. Like literally, the team then started winning gold medals everywhere in the Tour de France and everywhere else, right? And that's the difference, I think, between the top agencies, the top businesses who actually know how to compound these tiny gains and make them effective versus the ones that just are reactive. They're just doing a random project every day. They don't really productize or learn anything from it. They move to the next random project, etc. So,
And you
yeah,
sometimes just hope that you're doing better every time.
yeah,
And you might, because as like we have this type of natural process of improving as humans. When we do things again and again and again, even the muscles start remembering what you've done last time.
yeah.
But it's not a controlled growth. It's not a controlled it's not like a lab type of environment that allows you to get this 1% increase.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It only improves 1% if everyone improves at the same time. As in, everyone is consistently doing this. Yeah.
Okay.
Think of a recipe. Again, you publish a recipe, no one uses it. All the dishes are going to come out just random, right? Like one's too salty, one's too sugary. It's all going to be a mess, right? But if people follow the recipe and you can track it being followed, then you can improve the recipe and all the dishes the next day will come out great,
Right.
even better than yesterday. So you only get this power of gains and improve operations and more profitability in your agency if you A, can systemize, and B, actually track people doing stuff, not just like, oh, I hope you do it, I trust you, right? But if you're going to scale to a team of 20 people or 50 people, as one other agency, here's a story of another agency, which is more like a Google Ads agency. I know you guys, many of you probably doing more like consulting or web development type of projects. But here's an example of something where there's a great profitable niche in just being a Google Ads partner. And these guys are a large US
Right.
agency that kind of expanded beyond consulting and web development, things like this, to social, to Google Ads, essentially paid ads. And it turns out that they had to systemize. So firstly, like, how do I bring on a client? In this case, they had many questions to ask a client. They systemized that. The client has a client facing link where they can collect information from the client. They looked at virtually every tool in the planet, the usual workflow tools, the usual project management tools. They were telling us how nothing fitted. Then they gave us this little graphic about why they liked our system. I'm not going to try and sell Talify in this call. I'm selling you the concept of this systemization, right? You can use other products if you want, but think of this. You got to think about the system first, and then separate the people from the process. Imagine if everyone left your agency today. What would you do?
Right. He would start building from scratch, not only in most cases, not only the team, but the data, the knowledge that you accumulated over
The
the time that
knowledge.
the team was with you.
Correct. The knowledge, right? So the how you actually did those things,
Yeah.
right? And so if you really think and just step back for a second and ask, can I separate the how we do stuff, our secret sauce, how we do stuff, from the who does it? If you can, you have the basics of productization, systemization. And then you have to just package that into a menu because your client buys from that. Well, they don't literally buy from a menu. You should still have the soft client approach, right? The the approach you take today, where it's personal relationships and all that stuff, because you can charge the same money, but to deliver the same service and outcome costs you a lot less with this approach.
Right.
So
Freeing up a lot of profitability in the process as
yeah,
well.
basically massively improve the margins of your agency. Um, Even if you don't want to double the size of your agency, it doesn't matter. You can still improve the profitability by figuring out the atomic Lego pieces, the components,
Yes.
and the how. Yeah.
So I
So
like how you guys are taking so basically from the Adarim solution and the Talify solution, we're taking two different approaches to kind of the same problem but different places in time of this problem.
Hmm.
So, for example, from our point of view, what I'm trying to do when I'm building new features is I'm trying to already automate some of those recurring processes that I know that are shared among as many agencies as possible, so that you don't need to optimize the images every time that you upload them and download them to here and upload them to there, and all of those kind of redundant stuff. We're just trying to fully automate the process.
Yes.
But in each one of our businesses, there's also a lot more things that we've kind of came up with as we were building, a lot more customized workflows that we're creating for ourselves. And this is where I see this thing becoming extremely powerful. I'm just trying to take every workflow that we have and just kind of breaking down to those
Hmm.
actionable, extremely actionable steps, right?
Hmm. Let's be mature about this too. I mean, it's not like you can automate everything, because if you could, you wouldn't need humans anyway, right? It's 70 or 80% of stuff, it still has to be done by people because of their judgment
Right.
and because of these things. So those things you can automate, just fully automate, like using
Yeah.
an approach which truly does it for you. But you know what? It's only a niche segment of things that you can do that to. The other things, like go research this industry and whatever else, there's no AI, there's no bot that can safely do that, right?
Right.
Without human judgment or knowledge. Um, or just not make a dumb mistake, which, I mean, the worst thing you can automate is just a stupid thing. Now you're doing it 5 times faster, the same stupid thing, right? So it does require the human judgment element. What we do is we automate the next best thing someone should do without them having to think. I'm talking a person here, not a machine, right? And then we actually work really well with other tools like Zapier and automation tools, which do specific types of automation. So think of 80% like people driven, 20% fully automated. So they
Right.
have their respective worlds, and um, things fit into the buckets in the right way. So the complementary nature of those things is that between them both, you can build a system that eventually will be more and more automated in time. But please don't forget that, remember the restaurant example and the menu, right? Automation is right at the end of that. You need to have the menu, you need to price the menu, you need to sell the menu, and then you have to figure out how to, just the hard way, how to make dishes from that menu, and then again by hand figure out how to make them faster. And only then you purchase factory machines, which we call automation, right? That do specific aspects of those dishes automatically. But you still have to watch them. In McDonald's, people still have to watch the fries being
Right.
cooked, because otherwise they'll just cause a fire, right? So they do have machines for automation, but they're all really just controlled by people, right?
Yeah.
And
The
most of the
machine will
time it's
beep
people.
after 5 minutes, but the person is gonna check it, pull it out of the oil, check that
Yeah.
everything is actually proper and ready to
And
serve to other humans.
correct. And some things just cannot be automated. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want a robot creating a burger, because like what's the point in that, right? Like it's just not, there's not, sometimes you get so enthralled with automation, you just think I want to automate everything. But there's no, if there's no cheese one day, what does the robot do? Does it just get stuck? Like a human would just know what to do, just carry on, right? They substitute this with that, you know they know how to
They
make
figure it out.
variances, they figure it out, they're creative. So
Yeah.
I think that with an agency particularly, there's only so much you can automate. um, but that stuff definitely has a fantastic impact when you find opportunities to do that automation. So what we do is automate tasks between people and clients. We don't automate tasks for you fully, as in we do it for you. We don't do that. For that, you might have to get some kind of virtual assistant or a specialized team that can actually do that specific piece of work for you. Um, so by breaking it down into Lego pieces, you can push out those pieces to separate people or separate teams, and that's where you get the benefits of scaling up essentially. So I hope that provides some perspective on this, especially that book. Atomic Habits.
Yeah, I love that 1% principle.
Yeah.
And we're actually last year we were applying this concept within our company, within the team, mostly around like let's just that was kind of the mantra. Let's improve 1% every day, as a
Hmm.
team, as a whole, in everything that we do, in every aspect. If that is reaching our own deadlines, if that is reaching our own sales targets, is that is delighting users, through the support and every really aspect of what we're doing. We just wanted to be 1% better, and that made it a, really kind of consumable in the team's mind, because it doesn't seem like a
Hmm.
big improvement, but it still does. And now this year, because we saw the 40% or the 40x increase that we're seeing when you do that 1% day over day, this time it's about how do we 40x it, so we're
Yeah.
already looking at it from a broader point of view, because at some point, like what happened here on this book is really diving in deep and trying to find those tiny bits and pieces that you can push further, like oiling
Yeah. I mean,
the
you know,
things and stuff.
the ideas are great, but the execution in a team of 5 or 10 people, that's the hard part. Like, if you can make these gains. Like, say you come up with an idea for a gain, right? How do you make it effective tomorrow morning?
Well, yeah. Well, if you execute this in a systemized way, if you execute this on a regular basis, then it
Yeah.
becomes a habit, and then it becomes something that you can enjoy. I think that's basically the premise of the book, isn't it? Like how to
It
form
is. Yeah.
habits through
Yeah.
this
Hmm.
marginal gains kind of structure.
Yeah. And it's
I
habits
love
for
that.
an individual, right? In this case, it's also a team as well, right? But the team must follow those habits.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not a habit. It's just a random thing you do, right?
Yes.
And the other thing, business owners and agencies, I've heard of the book of 4 Hour Work Week. It's this
Right.
crazy dream that this guy, I think it's a famous book,
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss. You can't step away and get a vacation from your agency unless you productize, systemize, and make it predictable and have systems for
Yes.
things. I mean, do you think you can work 4 hours a week? Well, again, think about systems, which is what this book talks about too, right? So the theories are great. The problem is people go and create Google Docs and Google Docs of documentation, like this is how things should be done, right? But you have to actually track that being done. You actually have to. There's no system if no one follows the system, right? Like the same way, there's no recipe if no one follows the recipe.
Right.
So the tracking of the recipe is where the rubber meets the road. That's what separates the people who've executed this strategy versus those who are just talking about it and saying what a great book, but in real life it's not actually being used anywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's just a theory. So I think that this philosophy is why we created our whole company, actually, Talify. So it's just built around this whole aspect of tracking systems, essentially tracking processes running from blueprints. Blueprints are like recipes. So here you have a bunch of folders like finance processes. It could be design, like how to make a logo. It could be like how to set up WordPress, how to harden WordPress, whatever procedure you have, right? In our case, we have a product process called QA, before production release. We do
Right.
this process before we push a production release, and we've learned the hard way to we must do this.
Yeah. We also
One,
have like a system that is exactly around this thing. Learned,
yes,
sweat, blood, sweat, and tears until it was,
it's when the pain hits you, you're like, oh man, we need to actually follow the process instead of just talk about it.
yeah,
And this is only human. It can only be done by people because the common sense needed to do such a QA, we found, is unautomatable. It can only be done by people.
yeah, and it's a complex
Um,
process. For us, it's like
yeah,
a
and
4 hour process. You can't really automate so many steps.
But you don't want to be out there pushing a piece of software out. It's all half broken, and this is not, like the things you've learned, you should just embed into the
Yeah,
DNA of your operations. So these blueprints
100%.
are like DNA essentially. Um, so yeah, that's
What
uh
is the sanity check? That's interesting.
oh, we're about to make a video to add to this. So if you have Loom videos and just videos in general of how to do things, it's very nice to just have a task title like do this sanity check,
Right,
but describe how to do it
right,
as if I've just joined, you know, Talify for the first time, right? And here we have a video we're about to insert soon. You can just paste in a Loom or a Vimeo or a YouTube or whatever, right? And this is the how. You could also have instructions like um, log in without using a temp email address.
right.
Um, ensure it doesn't go to spam. Uh, the, uh, the password validation email or whatever. Again, I'm just making this up, but many of these things cannot be automated because things like this, like does the email look wrong, right? If I say, does the email look weird on
Yeah.
on a mobile device? Well, how does a robot know what weird is, right?
You need
Like
to create image regression and
it's
like check
like
before and
like
after. You
it takes
can, but it's
yeah.
it's a lot harder than just look at it.
I mean, there's so many things here at
Yeah,
stake, right? Um, and so this is an example of now. Of course, you can once you've written this out, this recipe, and you're confident this is the right way, you can always outsource it. You can have a VA. You can have someone do this for you.
yeah, because it's just an execution plan. You just do it.
Yeah. And get this. Imagine there was a problem in this QA. It doesn't have it's not just about doing it, it's about dealing with it too, right? So let's just say, like, was there a UX issue, right? The answers are just yes or no. So you can make sure someone did it because they have to answer this question. Was there a UX issue
Right.
that you spotted? Now, if there was a UX issue, ask head of design to check GitHub ticket to see if this is a new ticket that we need to fix before we release, right? Now, you only need to do that with using, and there's if this then that rules for this, which is what we love about this system. If there was a UX issue, is yes, then
Can
show
you
this task.
can you do like if yes, then send a zap or something like this?
Yeah. So when a task is completed, you can send a webhook, which can be caught by
Right.
Zapier or any kind of system,
Yeah.
like automate this.
Awesome.
So the great thing about
So
this is
this actually can go ahead and create tasks inside
it
Adarin.
can create
Uh,
the actual task or the GitHub issue or
yeah.
whatever. Yes, but the great thing is this: instead of a boring checklist of 50 things, you start with just 7 steps, right? And you only have to do this step if only done if an actual issue existed, right? Otherwise, who cares? Like, we don't have to see this. We
Right.
don't care, right? Like, when you think of a cappuccino, so you go to Starbucks, you order a coffee. They only froth the milk if you say, I want a cappuccino.
Right.
So this is true of any workflow. Don't think of it as just like a simple checklist. There are conditional branches required, like only do this if this is
Yes.
true. And so this is the power of systems. It requires if this then that, branching rules. Otherwise, you just have the world's longest boring checklist, of which most of the tasks are just like not applicable. And trust me, a lot of people just mark to-dos as done, not because they've done them, but because they don't have to do them.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's
So
just running through it. Okay. I don't
it's
need
not.
to make the milk.
Yeah, it's like there is no issues. Why am I even
Yeah.
checking this box? Because
Yeah.
so this is the most important part of designing processes. Like the branches of the using if this then that. So flowcharts are kind of a mess. This is an easier way to say if something then something. You can also use it to say if this task was completed. For example, if the changelog was written, then show this task,
Right.
which we
Can you
call
say then
dominoes.
go back to step 2 and
You can
restart?
also do that, like reopen step 2. Yes.
Right.
So it's very much like a flowchart, basically.
Yeah.
So with this power, you can go well beyond your standard project management or your standard like list of tasks,
Right.
because these are tasks of which most of them are hidden. They don't even show up unless the time is right. And so here, for example, I'm onboarding a customer, right? You're probably wondering, why is there only like 5 tasks here? If I show the hidden tasks, whoa, look at this. There's 33 tasks, right? But it's not time for these tasks to show up right now because it's not, this is not the right time for this stuff.
Right.
Like, just focus on these right now. When you finish this, the next one will show up. So it's a real time. And actually, can you see the more tasks just showed up once I checked off step 2?
Yeah.
So it's a real time dynamic sort of management system for a company. So yeah, people using it for all sorts of things. But back to the subject, I believe in this dream. I think 80. I think it's 20% of agencies get 80% of the business, like the usual Pareto principle. You can be better than this. You can be the agency that takes the
It's
cake,
only
right?
20%. Yeah.
Yeah,
And what would you say? That's an interesting kind of observation. Would you say is the difference? Is that it? Is that just like the systemization of things, the understanding that
yeah.
workflow is essential?
Quite honestly, having interviewed an agency owner who has scaled their agency to more than 50 or 80 people now, and is a Google partner, this guy, um, that's what he told us.
Yeah, and
Like
I
thinking,
can I
yeah,
can confirm that because we're working with when we're working with some of our enterprise users or the bigger agencies, the ones that are doing a few hundreds of websites per month. It is like running. It's like you imagine the dashboard at NASA. Before they launch the ship, everything
yes,
is gauges. Everywhere. They know exactly what moves the needle and to what degree, and like who has tracked a few minutes more than the other and why that happened, and what was the process
yeah,
that was taken for every step, because at this scale, and like you're saying, manpower is the labor is the highest cost of the business.
yeah.
So optimizing the productivity to a place where you know exactly what is happening at every moment, that is key for a service business. That what no matter how you flip it around, what we're selling is hours basically.
And yeah, the client doesn't have to know how or why you're systemizing or automating, right? But you also can't automate unless you've written down the process, if you
Yeah,
know the steps, because
documented.
if you don't know the Lego bricks of what comprises the whole thing, right? Then you can't automate. You can't automate something where you don't even know how it's done, right? It's
Yeah,
you have to start by asking what's the recipe before asking how can we automate the cooking of this step, and this step, because it's the whole thing that counts. Now, please bear in mind,
right.
start small. Do this for client onboarding, some small use case, right? Uh, but you mustn't, you know, it, I guess remove the word automation from your head at the beginning. That's what I advise to you, um, because it isn't anything to do with the how. It's the execution side. As you can automate as much as you want, you still have the same problem, which is that the human failure point, the person failure point still exists without a system to control how people do things, essentially, the recipe. So I think that's what I've learned from this guy, and a few other agency owners that we were speaking to. But I think if you want to know more, instead of me talking, go reach out to some of these people, right? This guy's called Kasim. I'm sure he'd be happy to speak to some of people listening here. You can always try your luck, just connect him on LinkedIn and just say, hey, just wanted the feedback on this. Um, People who have done this, they've thought really hard about becoming seriously better. Like, they've seriously stopped work and said, how can we make this productized, systemized, a recipe? So you might need to take time out to really think about this whole approach, which I know is hard, but you know, take one day out, you can save 20 or 30 or 50 days a year. It's probably worth it. Yeah.
It really is this level of impact once you start incorporating systemization into your day-to-day experiences everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like gaining months out of the year.
Hmm. So those books will prove those points, 4 Hour Work Week and James
Yeah,
Clear's book. And um, I think they just don't put that in the context of directly applicable for you guys as agencies and owners, right? Um, Sometimes these atomic habits are more like personal habits
right.
around health, like
Working
eating
out.
well
Yeah,
or exercise. So it's not necessarily exactly relevant, but the concepts are still the same.
yeah. It's applicable for sure.
Hmm.
Both are great books. I bought the 4 Hour Work Week back when it came out, like that was almost 20 years ago, I think,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to work. I didn't realize that I was actually being taught how to, I was like just in the early 20s, and I just didn't want to work. I wanted to do a
That's
four
when
hour work
you were
week.
a musician back then, weren't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, exactly. So I was thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I just want to play music. Let me do all the work in 4 hours and get back to the rehearsal.
Yeah.
But that actually taught me a whole bunch of other concepts around mindset and productivity, and like how you approach a task with high quality. So I got a lot more from this book, and I never learned how to work 4 hours per week. I work a lot more, but I accomplish a lot more as well.
Yeah. The sound bites, people when people talk about them, you get the sound bite, but it's hard work to create the system. Like with all things in life, the 2% of like the wow factor just looks good, right? But you need to have the devotion to commit yourself
Yeah,
to a systemized philosophy. The whole company has to commit to say, guys, we are not doing projects. We're not doing this random stuff anymore. We're not. Like you have to really be brave about this. But that's what it takes to really, really outperform. Um, uh, Ask anyone who's really made it in life. They didn't do things like everyone else did, right? It really does take separate differentiation. So, well, I hope if you need personal, direct one-to-one thoughts or advice, please reach out.
so where can
Um,
people find more about you, Amit, and Talify?
Well, first, I mean, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to connect with anyone personally. With Talify, if you just want to check it out, it's a free sign up, it's a free trial. So just go to talify.com. Um, you know, uh, the thing that's common between Atarim and Talify, Vito mentioned it before, is we both believe in these principles and concepts for the benefit of agencies. And it's almost complementary. It's a nice little, um, what we're talking about here is ideas, not products. We're talking about,
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
trying
the
to sell
concept.
you you know,
Yes.
we happen to be a system that lets you do this stuff, but that's not the point of today's chat, right? So if you just want to, I'm happy to just chat from a personal perspective without any reference to our own company or even our own product. So, try the app or just reach out personally on LinkedIn. Uh, it's Amit Kothari is my name. So just type that in. I think you will see the name right there. Hopefully, and this is where you see my entire LinkedIn. That's great, isn't it? Here it is. So just type that in. Um,
Oh, nice. How did you
there
put
you
a
have it.
video up there?
I was playing the other day and I found that feature. I think
Interesting.
I didn't want to because it looks quite needy and it looks a bit weird putting a video up there. So I was like, do I really want to do this? And then in the end, I just did it anyway. But yeah, so please reach out, guys. We're just uh just a friendly person, so happy to help.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today. I mean, it was really interesting. And I really hope that a lot of people that are watching this are going to start taking action into not only breaking down those Lego points, but actually implementing those systems, implementing workflows that they don't only write down once, but they enforce within their business so they can really make the impact that they can.
Yeah, I mean,
People are doing
definitely
it.
think about those if this then that rules, right? That's the basis of systems, like
Right.
conditional branching and rules. Any programmer knows those things
Yes.
as a default thing that they learn. So that's the way you should probably start thinking about workflows too,
Yeah.
not in terms of projects and checklists.
It is really is a
Um,
function. You're creating a function.
Yeah, yeah. It's your company is functions as a service,
Yeah,
really. Yeah, it's just a different mindset. Um,
really interesting.
yeah. Well, I hope at least this was of great interest to you guys. As I say, please reach out. We're not here to try and push you or sell you anything. Just advice is fine for a conversation. So
Well,
reach out.
thanks for joining me, Amit, and thanks for everyone that joined us, everyone that is watching on the replay. And I'm looking forward to the next coaching session. Have an awesome rest of the week.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Vito.